Are you considering divorce? Are you dealing with it now? Are you on the other side and not sure what comes next? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show with your host, Lisa C. Decker.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Nice to have you back for another week of the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show. I'm Lisa Decker, certified divorce financial analyst, real estate collaboration specialist in divorce, and certified amicable divorce professional, as well as the CEO and founder of Divorce Money Matters and the sponsor of this show, DivorcetownUSA.com. And I am going to thank you for joining us today. We have a wonderful guest who is going to talk about and answer the question, do you know who you really are? Think about that for a minute. You're probably saying, what? Well, there she is, our guest, Cantilena Barnes. And Christine holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Commonwealth University and a master's degree from Mercer University in clinical mental health. She has a counseling she is a counselor with a specialty in trauma. And she also believes that not only can going through something like trauma enrich your life, but it can also be a restorative journey through your physical, spiritual, and relational and mental well-being coming back from trauma. Entering counseling can provide a window into willpower, strength, and incredible courage that you never knew you had, and it can help uncover powerful abilities while providing useful strategies to enhance those abilities. I love that description, Christine, of counseling and what it can do for someone. And you don't have to have just gone through trauma to work with someone like yourself, but trauma does take things to another level. So I'm a big proponent of therapy. There's been a lot of taboo about it for so many years, but I will tell you that I think it is wonderful to have your go-to person, to share your most inner thoughts, get feedback, get tips and tools on how to handle what's going on in your life, and just to know that that special person is there. So I applaud you for the work that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about why you picked this title. Do you know who you are, and how it relates to divorce? Where are we bringing that introduction together?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. And truly, I just enjoy educating other women that need the support. And maybe this is their first divorce, and hopefully they're only one. And I do believe you have to know yourself before you can really have a successful divorce. I know that a lot of women feel that it's so overwhelming and it's so traumatizing that they feel hopeless, they feel helpless. And a lot of times that gives the other person in the relationship the more powerful upper hand. And I do believe through a couple different strategies that we can gain so much strength in the time of despair. And even if it was a planned divorce, I still believe that there are many things we must know about ourselves in order to go through this process, maintaining or even maybe gaining self-esteem, self-confidence.
And, it is so important that you have the support, especially through divorce, no matter how amicable or not, because you can't make sound financial decisions and legal decisions that you'll be faced with without emotional support, without being in right mind. And so it's a critical time in your life, and you definitely want to make sure that you have the right support system. So why is this divorce process so painful and yet necessary in certain situations?
I think that if we kind of go back to our roots, I was raised Catholic. And so I always believed that divorce was not really an option unless, of course, there was abuse, affairs, adultery. And so from a spiritual standpoint, I think divorce can be a lot of suffering, because depending on how my book has really gained a lot of wisdom from a lot of interviews of women, primarily women. And so when a woman goes through divorce, oftentimes she thinks it's necessary because of many different reasons, but yet she feels this shame and this guilt that just lingers on it, and it doesn't help in the process for that feeling to be in the back of the mind. So we have to learn to clear our mind. And if we are spiritual, I definitely think we need to pray about our situation, and we need to definitely pray about having a good support system, just like you said. And I think people think a support system could be limited to just friends and family, but it's so much bigger than that. And just like you mentioned, the finances, you have to have a good financial backing before you start this divorce. I had to have a forensic attorney, a forensic accountant. Not everybody has to have all that, but I do believe that through the suffering, I promise, through the suffering, people can get through a divorce successfully. I'm not sure there's ever a side that wins. You just have to believe for yourself, I did the best I could.
Mm. You did the best at that moment in time, right?
Mhm.
Because you
Mhm.
might not make those same decisions at a different moment in time. But that's the thing about divorce, that those moments can be so overwhelming and so full of confusion. And if you don't have the confidence that you're making the best decisions that are sound decisions for your future, it
Yes.
can really wreak havoc. And then you get to the other side and you realize, I could have done this differently. So the emotional support with professionals is vital, folks. Family and friends may mean well, but sometimes they can fan the flames because they're
Yeah.
hurting too, right?
Mhm.
You need objective outside counsel of a legal advisor, a financial advisor, and both of those professionals specializing in divorce. You don't want a general practitioner in this case, and your therapist to round out your what we call the three-legged stool. So you get the best support in a core team. And then you may need to add other people as your situation warrants. But those three are the critical professionals that you want to have when you're going through a divorce. So why is this process so important to you of assisting people in divorce? And what is the best form of healing from abusive marriages? And how did you brave through it? I think I just gave a little bit of your thunder there. So tell us about your situation, Christy.
Yeah. So much of my situation, unfortunately, due to confidentiality, things that I signed, I can't share, but I can share the things that I still feel like are so valid and so important to women. I just think that I had a heart for women who suffer from marriages. I think marriages are so beautiful, and I think it's very difficult to go through life without having a partner beside you, especially as we're starting to age. And so I knew my divorce was probably coming 10 years in, and I hadn't worked for quite a while. I was in my 50s, and I really did not believe that I had the willpower to get through it. I stayed for a lot of reasons that I think a lot of women do stay for. It could be financial, it could be your children, it could be your age. There's so many reasons. But when it comes down to it, in the state of Georgia, you cannot say, I will not get divorced. I remember going through therapy, and it was a Christian counselor, and we went together weekly, sometimes twice a week, but things were not getting better. And so at the end of the day, I knew that I was not in the relationship that I needed to be with a husband, someone who wouldn't throw me under the bus, someone who would stay with me as I aged. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't the first one to go and see a divorce attorney. And I do remember when I got served, it was pretty tragic because I was pulling up to my house and a lady actually asked me my name and I thought it was a neighbor. And she just threw the subpoena at me. And she ran back to her car that she parked in front of my house. And I remember just crying and crying, like, why is this happening? What did I do? So when I did get an attorney, I wrote a letter to the judge and I asked for me to not have to sign the document of divorce. There's no such thing in the state. I don't know if there's any states that allow you to say you're not going to get divorced. So when your hand is forced, even though you're suffering, it doesn't make it feel any better to go through that process. So I think my heart is really in teaching women how to successfully get through the pain, whether it's before, during, or after. I believe in 4 essential things. One is you must have support. That might look like going to a divorce group of healing. The interesting thing is, just because I'm a Christian, I've brought Jewish ladies to a couple of the meetings that were Christian. It doesn't matter. Essentially, we all have pain in similar ways. So reach out and just find yourself a divorce group. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I really, really, really do believe that you have to have others that will empower you. This is where the very first question you asked me, why is it important to know yourself? It is important to know yourself well because we basically all have 5 love languages. It can dictate statistically if we're going to remain in a relationship, healthy or unhealthy. So when you learn what your love language is, which is a simple quiz, takes 20 minutes, you might need quality time. That's something I needed and I didn't get. My husband worked a lot, owned his own business. So I was lacking that. So when I was going through the divorce, I knew I needed quality time from someone who really cared, an authentic person. The next thing I think is read any type of books that you can, self-help books. You have got to become your authentic self. You've got to dig deep and find out who you are at this point in your life, because the truth is, your old friends, your old church, your old anything may not accept you any longer. You're a new person now, and there's nothing negative at all about that. The next thing I really believe is once you've had self-care, once you've had the groups, you do have to recreate hobbies and things that make you happy. And so if you kind of mix all that in the pot, you really are going to be okay, even on the darkest days.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it is so important. All those points that you made. Now you mentioned in the information that you sent me here about something about the best form of healing from abusive marriages. Was that any part of your experience?
I believe that so many people only think about physical abuse. I can remember being in court and the person prior to me, it was a woman, she was hit by a beer bottle in her head. She wanted a restraining order. And she had to go on for 20 minutes why she needed this. So if you have to go through these jumps and hurdles to protect yourself from physical abuse, what about the emotional abuse that happens behind closed doors? I don't know, Lisa, if you're familiar with the 4 horsemen. It's a kind of a pretty famous thing, and it says that there are 4 basic rules that if you violate them in a marriage or a relationship, it is not going to be healthy. That's what I think happened in my marriage. It just was so much of every one of those things in the 4 horsemen. And I don't even want to tell people because I want them to go out and read it. What is it? It's very easy to find. So when you're in an emotional abusive relationship, people can't see your scars. People might not even believe you, because horrendous things can happen that don't seem normal to most, but yet you know that they happened. And one thing about kind of healing from this emotional abuse, have a diary, document everything, take pictures. I still have videos that make me sob, not even cry, but sob about what happened in my house. And even though I showed those videos and those pictures during my mediation, they still didn't gain me much. So here's what I think. I know a lot of attorneys in Atlanta, and I know they want to learn more about a narcissist personality, any personality disorder. Okay, there's plenty. They really want to know more. But Lisa, I don't know if you know this. Our Georgia board only requires therapists like myself or attorneys to take X amount of CEUs. And those are the credentialing units that we need in order to stay abreast on topics. Well, it's not mandated in any way for attorneys or judges to take coursework in personality disorders, which equals emotional abuse. So when
Absolutely.
you do go to court or you do go in front of like attorneys and you're explaining some of the craziness that might have happened to you, I don't think everyone's educated as fully as we could help.
Yes, I understand. And I recently got a new certification as a certified amicable divorce professional, trying
Wow.
to help even high conflict clients go through an amicable divorce because our process of traditional divorce is ripe with conflict. And the more conflict there is in your divorce, the more that you're going to pay in legal fees and other fees possibly. So, this is a new way that we're approaching things. But at that conference where I got certification, we had a training hour in high conflict personality disorders and divorce. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener. And I'm pretty familiar with a lot of that stuff, and it was still an eye-opener. And I do agree with you on that. I think part of the problem is that, first of all, I try to keep clients out of the courtroom. The only time I want them to be in the courtroom, even if and it may not even be necessary then, is when the judge is signing the final paperwork, right?
Mhm.
People don't necessarily know that a typical divorce in America is $15,000 to $25,000 per spouse.
Mhm.
And I know from what our conversation pre-show that you went far beyond that, and it can take on a life of its own, especially if you're going through a traditional litigated divorce and you're going to let the judge decide, because once an attorney has to start preparing a case for court, well, it can go through the roof. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars is not unusual. So, it's vitally important that you understand that the judges, many cases, have seen and heard a lot of this. And, infidelity, emotional abuse, it takes a lot for a judge to award something beyond the typical. And, that's unfortunate. A lot of people spend a lot of money to get their day in court, and only to find out that, like you said, it didn't really change much, even in mediation.
I might just make one comment. I agree, and I commend you so much for your interest in all your education in this. Sometimes we feel a little out in left field and don't know all the people that are connected and are educated in what we're talking about today. But I will tell you, if you think about a day in court with a judge, so it's family court, what judge has the energy, the tenacity, the humbleness to really listen to every case and understand every detail? It's just not possible. And so it's so good to keep divorces out of court, because you may think that you're going to win, but that isn't. Sometimes it can spin on a dime. I've been there. And here's what I want to say. The last step that I didn't tell you in healing, I think has to come to forgiving and letting go, because I've been divorced 5 years and it stayed with me a long time. If we think about just 3 years, that's more than 1,000 days. So I do believe at some point after the divorce, quicker than not, we have to get on with our life and say, it may not have looked like I wanted it to, but I can do anything I want now.
Mhm. Yes, it's about forgiving yourself,
Mhm.
and forgiveness of your spouse doesn't have to mean that you forget. It just means that you're moving on and you're allowing the healing to start. And I want to say one more thing about court. You know, I once went for a training at the Georgia Bar for family law attorneys and divorce financial planners, and they brought in a panel of 3 judges from different counties. They gave them the same fact patterns, and then they asked them how they would rule. And it was very eye-opening to hear each of them say they would rule differently based on their knowledge, their experience, and maybe, you know, the car ride to court that day. Maybe somebody cut them off on the road that looked like a person standing in front of them. One of them actually said that. And their takeaway was that they have discretion in their courtroom, and they prefer that these things be settled outside of court. And, you know, it is a crapshoot walking in there. You've got a 50-50 chance. And one other thing is that people don't understand that many times the judges will send the attorneys and the parties outside of the courtroom and say, see if you can settle this right now. And 90% of the time they do settle.
Yes.
But you've spent all that money getting to that point. And it's just a waste, and it's sad because it's emotionally draining, you know, energy sucking, money sucking. And if you have children, it can just destroy the fabric of your family. So there are different ways of going about this, and learning from women like yourself who are not only in the trenches working with people who've been through divorce or are going through divorce, but also having experienced it yourself is so valuable to hear these stories. So thank you for being so authentic and vulnerable here and sharing what you can. So can you tell me, Christine, when can a person know it may be time to begin the divorce process? A lot of people have asked me that question over the years. I think people innately know that, you know, something's not right and it may be time to start looking at that. How do they approach you about that, and what advice do you give?
I think when there's children involved, and I wish I could even pinpoint an age. I did a lot of studies to see when children are the most vulnerable. It seems that if your children are really young, let's say 1 year to 4 years, they don't have a lot of active memory that will stay with them. Most people cannot remember back to 5 years old. Okay. That I think has a huge bearing on when to leave, when it's time, how old your children are. Let's say that your children are in their teens. Just prepare yourself well. My child was in his early preteens, and I really believe, and not as a therapist, this is beyond therapy, that your child, their value system will be quite different than another child's. For instance, my son always went to church with me. He was led to believe marriages go on forever, that you ask for your forgiveness and you move forward. You talk to a pastor, a priest, a minister, a rabbi, whoever you need to, and you lose your pride and stay. Well, that didn't happen with me. So in a way, Lisa, I felt like I deceived my family, because I do still believe in the family unit and I adore marriages. But when they are destructive in front of a child, it's time. Let's say you don't have children. If you're getting sick all the time, your mental health has become unacceptable. You're depressed. It's hard to get to work. It's hard to focus. You're crying a lot. Your anxiety is through the roof. It is time, especially if you've already done marital therapy and that didn't work. So I do believe it goes back to children, health, and what you're able to tolerate. And I hate to say that word tolerate, but I do believe sometimes financially women aren't able to leave yet. They need a nest egg, they need better support, so they don't make a rash decision. They've weighed out everything possible they could do to heal this marriage, and it's not working. It's time to depart.
It can be very scary. And that's why the benefit, there's so many benefits of having a team, but one of the greatest benefits is that you build confidence because you're able to work with people who are experts in this field and who will also educate you, inform you. You know, I keep talking about traditional divorce. Let me clarify that. That is where you lawyer up each party, you go through the traditional process of discovery and maybe interrogatories and depositions and then court mandated mediation. And if you haven't settled, you're off to, you know, court in front of a judge or a jury. And, you know, that can be very traumatic in and of itself. I call that heading towards Bigger Bucks Boulevard and Duke It Out Drive. There are other ways of getting this done. And amicable divorce is really a new way of getting divorced. It's a paradigm shift that's happening in the world of divorce because people don't want to destroy their families in the process, and they don't want to spend all that money, right? There's no reason to have to do all of that if you've got professionals who can guide you and help you to make sound decisions. Now, on the financial end, you know, the reasons that a lot of women don't leave or men don't leave, because sometimes, you know, the abuse can go both ways, but partners don't separate is because they're unsure of what it looks like on the other side. And so when you're working with someone like myself, who can give you a black and white snapshot of here's what you own, what you owe, what may be owed to you, and here's what you have coming in, and here's what you have going out, and here's the bottom line. How do we balance all of this? How do we make you both as whole as possible? Once you see that in black and white, now you've got clarity, and you can work on filling the gaps with the professionals that you're working with. And that changes everything. Total game changer.
Exactly. Yes. I believe everything you just said, every detail.
Okay. I'm glad we're in sync here. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but it is so important, folks, that you hear this from not just me, but every professional that I bring on this show, because you're going to hear the same themes over and over. You have more control than you know. You cannot control your ex or soon to be ex. You can control yourself. You have to get educated in the process. You need to be a proactive partner, not a passive participant in this process, because otherwise you're going to get railroaded, run right over by possibly your attorney and your spouse, right? So knowing the questions to ask and knowing who to go to for support and for help and all of that is vitally important to getting your best outcome and moving on to the next chapter of your life with grace and with confidence. And that's what we're about here. So tell us, where can a person find peace and mentors during this process? I think we've talked a little bit about it, but I'd love to know more thoughts from you.
Sure.
1 minute.
I think that peace comes definitely from inside you. So if that's prayer for you, if it's meditation for you, if it's gaining a new social circle that accepts you and understands you and they've been there, that's what you need to be doing. Also, just know this. Don't ever bring a knife to a gunfight. You have got to have every single I dotted and every T crossed before you enter this process. It is grueling. I would never say anything different. It can be grueling, but you can be such a new person and find peace within yourself. I promise.
Well, Christine, did you have some slides you wanted to share? We have less than a minute left. Why don't you go ahead and at least let's give everyone your contact information. I think we're running out of time here. So
Okay.
let's take a look at that.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful here. Why don't you tell us about your book and where folks can find you?
Yes. So this book will be on Amazon, of course. It will be in some Christian bookstores. It also, I'm working on a dual citizenship, hoping to get back to Italy. So it's also going to be for those over in Europe. And it will be very reasonably priced. And it will give you 13 chapters of things that will help you get a good start. And I've left my website for you and my email for you. I have a Facebook group for women that are in the middle or just beginning their divorce. So please take advantage of all of it.
Wonderful. And I'm going to say it's changinghopecounseling.com for those
Yes.
who may be listening in and not able to watch. So changinghopecounseling.com. Christine, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to take a moment here to let folks know about some resources that we have available for them. At Divorcetown USA, you can download the Divorcetown USA roadmap that you see here, which includes an ebook that explains each of these options and helps you understand which might be best for you and your family, and outlines other professionals and or resources that you may need along the way. And we also have free articles and videos, and our marketplace features some of our favorite products and services. And at Divorce Money Matters, you can download the free divorce financial fitness kit that I created to help you get better organized and take more control of your money matters during your divorce. And this is a great resource when you're getting started. And the kit includes an ebook, a working Excel spreadsheet of documents you'll need to gather, and 50 must-ask questions for when you're ready to meet with a family law attorney that you might not know to ask. And our next slide talks about Divorcetown USA and as we sponsor a virtual divorce help and hope support group through meetup.com, and we meet once or twice a month via Zoom. Meeting dates and times are always posted on Divorcetown USA in the events section, so feel free to join us there. This is always free of charge. And next week, we'll be talking to Divorcetown realtor Lauren Loper on the subject, forced to sell over the holidays, how to prepare when your spouse won't cooperate. And Lauren is really a fabulous expert at this, so you won't want to miss this show. And as always, we thank you for being here, and thank you, Christine. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.